guilty to malicious mischief in the second degree as charged. We're also present under cause number 11C029251 SCA. Mr. George Shearson is present representing Mr. Lund. In that matter, Mr. Lund pled guilty to malicious mischief in the second degree and 2 counts of trafficking in the first degree. Your Honor, I know the court's had an opportunity to review the state's recommendation in this case.
I have, but I'm very interested to hear you address the defense request in this case.
I'm glad to, Your Honor. The state is recommending the high end of the 29 months as charged on these cases. I have prosecuted Mr. Lund on more than one occasion, and I can tell the court.
Did you handle the 2010 matter?
I handled one of the 2010 matters. I handled the matter that was eventually, he pled guilty to theft 2 under cause number 091059663.
Okay, go ahead.
I know I've been up before the court several times talking about different people who are high impact offenders, and Mr. Lund is a high impact offender that's really affected the West Seattle community. The reason we're asking for the high end in this case is because Mr. Lund continually steals from the victims, from residents, and victimizes the people who live in West Seattle. I say that because based on his criminal history, we have the prior residential burglary which happened in West Seattle, which is on his criminal history. We also have the prior theft in the second degree, which also happened in West Seattle, which is over by Jefferson Square. In that case, in the first case, he broke into the victim's house and stole from her. In the second case, he broke into a business in West Seattle, Jefferson Square, and was in possession of copper wire. And he pled guilty to theft in the second degree in that case. Mr. Lund is, and also, Your Honor, on the burglary case, Mr. Lund pled guilty to theft 3 for stealing a catalytic converter back in 2010. The reason that's important, Your Honor, is because in our case, one of the causes before the court was his malicious mischief in the second degree. Starting with that case, he did it again. We had an elderly victim who made the mistake of living in West Seattle and parking her car in her carport and have a garage, and Mr. Lund goes out and saws off the catalytic converter and is headed to traffic it, which is what he did in the prior case. Then, looking at the case, the extensive investigation that was done in the other case, the same situation, Mr. Lund stealing from, again, West Seattle. In the charged case of malicious mischief in the second degree, he stole another catalytic converter, and then of course he's confessed to trafficking the 2 of them. And the state's position, Your Honor, is, and I know the court is very willing to, and I think that's commendable, give people an opportunity for treatment. But I think
depends on the person.
It does, I agree, and we've been up. But I will just say, Your Honor, it's not like there's a certain point where, with respect to the community and with respect to what they've done, the state's position is just impose the time. And that's what I'm asking you, just impose the 29 months on this case. I'm not confident that Mr. Lund is going to get a prison-based DOSA and come out and not just come right out and re-victimize members of the community. And I mentioned West Seattle just because it's an unusual case in that the criminal history that I see, that I've dealt with him on, is all in West Seattle. And it's just that he's continually, I mean, these aren't, I'm not going to argue, these definitely aren't violent offenses, but these are the kind of offenses that affect everybody in their everyday lives. And he's had a great impact on the community. And I'd ask that the court impose 29 months and not, I'm sure he is a drug addict, Your Honor, but the state's position is that at a certain point, the court and the state is asking the court at this point just to give him as much time as you can. Because we don't want to see any more victims. You know, either you get your house broken into, you get your business broken into, you're selling the scrap metal, or you leave your car in the driveway and then your catalytic converter's gone. So that is why, Your Honor, we're not agreeing to the DOSA. I told counsel that all along, that we would be asking for the high end in this case. And that's what we're asking the court to do.
Thank you. Mr. Finn or Mr. Shearson, I'm happy to hear from you, but I want one of you to tell me what Mr. Lund has done to get treatment, if anything, since 2001, when he got his first conviction.
I can, mind?
No, I don't. I should
can't-
point out to Your Honor that Mr. Pang has been representing Mr. Lund a lot longer than I have, so I think he can probably address that better.
I'm happy to hear from both of you. Go right ahead, Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Your Honor. I actually represented Mr. Lund on his residential burglary charge, which was approximately 9 months ago. And in that matter, I think what really leaped out to me in his case was about, it was two basically burglaries. The basis of the second, which was reduced, was he stole electricity and water to wash his clothes and then charge his, I believe, his phone. It was a non-occupied apartment. And in the first residential burglary, it was a woman who had been caring for another individual and hadn't been home in a long period of time, and that's the house that he burglarized. In speaking towards treatment, we did provide the court this afternoon, very late.
I read the sound mental health assessment. What I didn't see is any history of trying to get treatment.
It does reference, I believe, on the first page, on the bottom, if I remember correctly, going to Thunderbird, 2004. I'm sorry, it's not on the first page. And so, my understanding is that he did, it is on the first page after the cover sheet, 3 paragraphs up from the bottom. It says, client reports that he'd gone through treatment at Thunderbird in 2004, inpatient, moderate risk for relapse.
I'm not seeing much of a break in the action after that. He's got convictions every year since 2006, sometimes more than that.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. I think what the court needs to see from Mr. Lund, which I think he can show today, is his willingness to change his life for the better. And in speaking with Mr. Lund, it seems to be his overriding impulse is the fact that his daughter, who I accidentally said was 5, she's actually 4, is getting to the age where, I mean, every child needs a father, but it's getting to a point where she'll remember these things happening. She'll remember her father not being there. She'll remember her father not being involved in her life. And I think, in speaking with Mr. Lund, that has been the biggest impulse for him toward working towards treatment. He was, during the period of part of our case, he was, participating in CCAP and he was released to that. He did get misdemeanor charges filed on him, which returned him to custody, but that's how he got the CCAP evaluation. If Mr. Lund just wanted a period of time and get on with his life, he could have just asked for work release at his bond hearing. He could have just asked for to be held to reserve on bail. And speaking with Mr. Lund, his daughter's age is really the impulse in his life to change and to better himself.
She was born 4 years ago, then she was born in 2007, unless my math is off.
No, that is correct.
That year he had convictions for violation of a no contact order twice and criminal trespass in the first degree. Next year, when she was a year old, he had convictions for harassment, criminal trespass in the second degree, and criminal trespass in the second degree. In 2009, when she was 2 years old, he had convictions for possession of marijuana, criminal trespass in the second degree, criminal attempt, and criminal trespass in the second degree. In 2009, he also had a felony conviction for theft in the second degree, which we've talked about.
Correct.
In 2010, when she was 3 years old, he was convicted for theft in the third degree and residential burglary that we've discussed. I have to say, I'm not seeing her as a big motivator in his life so far to do something about his drug addiction, and I suspect she hasn't seen much of him so far, given the number of convictions. No.
Sorry.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, I can tell the court that when I was representing him on the burglary charges previously, he never mentioned treatment to me. That was not contemplated in our discussions about communication, negotiation.
Right, he wasn't looking at prison items unless the charge is more severe than I've heard about.
I don't recall, I believe he did 6 months
Right.
a day on it.
Right.
But, I mean, I do remember that it was 2 burglary charges, so they do double against each other, and so the standard range may have been a prison range.
Or might have been 9 to 12. Who knows?
Yeah. Right, it was just one of it, but with 2 more. best person to speak to the court about that is Mr. Lund.
I'll be
so.
looking forward to hearing from him. Go right ahead, Mr. Payne, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, I think that's most of it, that, you know, Mr. Lund has made some efforts, and if the court just imposes time, I guess the community is quote-unquote safe for that extra few months. But this isn't a residential DOSA eligible offense. I mean, for Mr. Jorson.
That's correct.
And so it's not like he's gonna be able to get out of prison completely. The question is, how much community custody will he have? How much can the court help Mr. Lund have a chance to move on and not be before the court again? I think Mr. Lund could definitely serve 29 months, no question about that. But the question is then, what happens to the community at that point? What happens to Mr. Lund? What happens to his daughter then? The court will hear from Mr. Lund about, you know, why he feels treatment is important to him now. But I guess I don't see how 7 months, you know, the difference between low end and high end, or, you know, even the difference between a prison-based DOSA and the high end really changes a lot for the community or for Mr. Lund. And I think the court has, or does, you know, consider these things in terms of how do we make sure that offenders aren't reoffending? How do we make sure people at least have the opportunity to change? Whether or not Mr. Lund changes, nobody will know. Mr. Cowell doesn't know, I don't know. Mr. Lund probably doesn't even know. But the question is, do we give people the opportunity to find out?
Mr. Jorson, I'm happy to hear from you.
Sure, and just briefly, because Mr. Payne, I think, has covered a lot of the material. I would say, as I put in my pre-sentence report, I would actually submit to you that the lack of treatment is even more of a reason to give him a dose, and that is because it's quite obvious that without any treatment, this is what happens. These kind of crimes are consistent with somebody who has an addiction problem. A dose sentence, I think, is often misunderstood, including clients that I represent. They think that it's going to be just this easy, hey, I get half off. It's not the way it is. You make a mistake, you're right back in prison. And so I would submit to you, respectfully, Your Honor, that I think that he will have something over his head if he messes up. He'll go right back to into custody. And that's, I understand that the flip side of that as well, then the court's taking a risk that he's going to commit another crime. I understand what Mr. Calvo is saying. We're not here to minimize what's gone on here. What we're trying to suggest is this would probably be in the best interest of all people. So that's all I have to add. Thank you.
All right. This is what I got from Ms. Halleck, who's the victim on the malicious mischief in the second-degree case, which happened on February 13th of this year. She said, I am disabled due to a vehicle accident damaging both knees, resulting in painful arthritis. I walk only with a cane, only for short distances, and even with a vehicle, I have trouble getting groceries into the house and put away. Being deprived of my vehicle for 17 days resulted in exhausting even the, quote, emergency rations, end quote, advised by the federal government. I had no fresh meat for 12 days, no eggs for 9 days, no fresh vegetables, nor fruit, nor milk for 7 days, no canned fruit for 5 days. For the last 4 days before my vehicle was repaired, I had canned vegetables for, quote, brunch, end quote, and sardine sandwiches for, quote, dinner, end quote. My Social Security benefit payment is 1/4 to 1/3 below state poverty level. Even that has been frozen at 2008 amount. Remembering how my parents provided for their family after the 1929, quote, crash, end quote, and subsequent depression, I have been managing a budget to stay relatively independent. Had the stolen item not been returned, I would have had to, quote, find, end quote, over $1,000, according to the repair shop estimate. Not possible. The stress is having an effect on my body. Other men and women are fighting and dying in foreign wars to protect those, quote, at home, end quote. Having able-bodied and educated men at home behave in this fashion is affecting my spirit. Well, I'll hear from you, Mr. Lund.
Your Honor, I know,
it's due to a drug problem. And, I need some type of help. I have a daughter who I, care for more than, more than anything. And, I know I've been trying to be there, but I've been fighting, a drug addiction, and it's just kind of taken over my life. I lost my brother, I lost my family, and since then I've just been using drugs, lost, I guess, and facing all this time, it's really made me kind of reevaluate, what I'm doing with my life, and, I kind of have to make a choice now, to, get used to being in prison and committing crimes and, not being there for my daughter, and, or maybe getting a chance at, trying to get my life together. I've graduated high school, I think I have, I'm not stupid, I'm not, I just made poor choices, and I just asked for, a chance to get some treatment and, try to get my life together, because I feel it's kind of like now or never. And I love my daughter and my family. I got, my dad and a lot of people back in my life since I've been in jail. I've been trying to establish a plan of action, to get out and be okay in life. I want to try to make a success story out of, myself, rather than have the West Seattle community, think that I'm just a thief, and, so I hope that he makes the right decision.
Mr. Lund, I think I'm notorious with the prosecutor's office for my approach to people who are drug addicted. When I sentence people to treatment, I supervise them in my own court. I meet with them often, I praise them for their progress, I give them appointment books so they can keep track of their appointments. I see a lot of people who have long criminal histories who are trying to turn their life around, and I've given prison-based doses before over the state's objections. I just did it in the case that was just before yours. So I believe in treatment, and I often think that it assists the community, because somebody who's clean and sober is less likely to victimize the community. But I have to tell you, Mr. Lund, strangely enough, even though the last gentleman I sentenced had a gun, which I normally take extremely seriously, your crime seemed to me to be more damaging and more callous than his. He was caught stealing a pen because he was essentially in a fog of grief and drugs. And he happened to have a gun because he was hoping to do a trade for drugs. But you've been caught over and over again, and not just for theft. It's not like your criminal history is only about drug addiction. And you kept right on going. You've had opportunities to get treatment. Apparently you went in 2004, and you jumped right back into criminal behavior from the time your daughter was born forward, I gather, if I've got the year of her birth right. Last year, you got caught on almost identical facts and sentenced, and I know that the judge must have ordered you to get treatment. I can't believe any judge in our court wouldn't be interested in it, and if they didn't order it, you should have done it. I mean, what else would be a wake-up call except collecting your first couple of felonies, which is what you did the last couple of years? I don't think we're getting your attention. I don't disbelieve that you care about your daughter, and I don't disbelieve that you care about your family, and I don't disbelieve that you'd like to get clean and sober, but I don't see the commitment here to straightening up that I would want to see, to take a risk that somebody else doesn't have to go through what this victim went through. You essentially marooned her in her home. She could have starved. You can't do this to people when you've already gotten warning that your crimes are actually hurting live, living human beings. I want you to get treatment, but you're going to have to do it on your own hook, meaning you're going to have to sign up for drug groups and plan on signing up for treatment when you're released. But I am not going to give you state assistance because it would cut your sentence. And I'm not confident enough of your motivation that I'm willing to run the risk that the next mistake you made that might get you returned to custody would be at the cost of somebody like this victim. I'm sorry, I'm just not willing to take that chance on you. I want you to see if you can take that chance on yourself. Prove me wrong, but I'm following the state's recommendation here. This is a sentence at the top of the range on both matters, running concurrently and concurrently with the municipal matter. I'm ordering no contact whatever with the named victims or any of the named co-defendants in the certificate for determination of probable cause on the second cause, and by that I mean the trafficking cause. To the extent they've been identified, I don't want you having anything to do with them. I'm ordering the victim penalty assessment, and I'm ordering the $500 DNA collection fee that's required. I have a figure for Ms. Harry-Look, and I sure hope you're ready to sign off on it, Mr. Payne, for $1,050.17 for restitution.
You're actually,
If you're not, we'll set this over.
I have not received that to my knowledge.
All right.
And so that's the only reason why.
We'll put a restitution hearing on my calendar, talk to Mr. Lund about whether he wants to waive his presence or not. And with regard to the second cause number, the state has the normal 180 days to set a restitution hearing. I'm waiving all non-mandatory costs and fees because I think that $1,200 plus restitution is plenty of money for Mr. Lund to be liable for. Mr. Lund, I know you haven't been in the prison system, but I've toured quite a few prisons, okay? And I can tell you right now, you've got to figure out how you're going to do your time. Because if you just float in there and make friends, you're going to head in the wrong direction. You're going to have to be focused on your own education, your own work skills, your own reading, and your own family to get through the prison system. You do not want to make friends with the people you meet there. The better behaved you are in the prison system, the more good time you're going to accumulate and the quicker you're going to be seen an exit. You can join some groups of people who are drug addicted in the prison system. Virtually every facility has those available. And you definitely can make plans for enrolling in treatment on release. I'll leave that to you. Like I said, prove me wrong.
Thank you, Your Honor. He does wish to waive his presence at the restitution.
Thank you. Mr. Lund, I'm pretty sure you've been told this before, but you can't have any kind of gun. Long, short, loaded, unloaded, collectible, antique, no sort of gun. You can't have a gun for a special reason, like protecting yourself or your family going hunting. You can't have guns that look broken, but that are capable of being made operable so that they could fire a bullet. Be aware that if you're with people who have guns, and the state can prove you have the ability to exercise dominion and control over those other people's guns, you could still be convicted of being a felon in possession of a firearm. That carries a very significant term.
He's in receipt of those notices, Your Honor, as well as both clause numbers, as well as the clerk's directions on clerk's papers.
Thank you. And Mr. Lund, you also can't vote, at least until you're released from confinement. I'd strongly suggest you check with an attorney before you register to vote after that to make sure that you're clear, because voting in violation of this restriction is also a felony.
He has received also copies of his notice of rights on appeal. Mr. Lund, can you just briefly turn your attention to paragraphs 6 and 7?
Actually, I'm going to turn your attention to the whole thing. 30 days to file a direct appeal, a year to file a collateral attack. After that, you've pretty much lost those rights, but read the whole notice. Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. I'm signing the fingerprint forms to show that Mr. Lund gave us his fingerprints in open court.
I don't.
And you're, or actually, can you get a date for the restitution hearing?
Sure.
So I
For
just,
Mr. Lund's family that I suspect is here in the courtroom, let me strongly encourage you to maintain very good contact with him in the prison system. It is possible to visit any of the facilities. Most of them are very welcoming about that. The more contact he has with his family and the less he has with the people in the prison system, the better. I'll leave it to you folks to work that out. You're going to go to Shelton, Mr. Lund. They're going to screen you there for risk, and then they're going to ship you to a facility your family can track where you are online, and they can stay in touch with your prison counselor as well.